So you're not going to believe what happened to me recently. I got dragged on Twitter for being right. Yeah, that actually happened. I have to share it because it was an incredible experience. Well, not necessarily an incredible experience. If we're being serious here, no one wants to be dragged or ridiculed on Twitter for obvious reasons. I suppose what I'm trying to say is that I see this as an opportunity, a teachable moment if you will, because most of the tweets people made in response to mine were just downright wrong. So I'm going to address most of the tweets because unfortunately some of these guys have deleted their tweets, which shows you who these people are ultimately. But I'm going to go through most of the responses people made just to clear up some confusion and misconceptions. I realized that there were some people who were just trying their best to just not understand what I was saying, and then there were some people who were just truly unaware. So whichever one you are, I think that you'll benefit from watching this video. And by the way, if I need to, I might include some clips of some amazing economists to go over these concepts if I'm not already going over them properly. Before I start the video though, I have to remind you to sub if you're not already subbed, share and like the video. And I have to give a special thanks to the people who have subscribed to me thus far. You guys mean a lot to me. Alright, let's go. So this whole episode on Jamaican Twitter, of which the topic was economics by the way, started with me responding to a tweet a girl made. This is the tweet. Every single Jamaican farmer should be able to access a grant or loan to properly secure their property and stock. Instead of having all these security companies supplementing the incompetence of the police force, they should be able to access inexpensive security for their assets. To which I said, loans are only given to people who are most likely to repay them. Financial institutions are not charities. And if you say, well, the government should do it, that'll be at the expense of the rest of us. Our tax dollars would have to go towards subsidizing an already weak industry. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that statement. Nothing. But unfortunately, you had some people quoting the tweet. Not a lot, by the way, because if you actually check the number of quotes, there are only 26, some of which were in agreement with me. But you had some people saying that what I said was rubbish, without explaining why. So it's now time to go through the tweets and address the nonsense that these people were saying. Let's look at this first tweet. What a mess. My man call... look, I'm just gonna paraphrase. He called the agri-industry weak and he has an issue with it being subsidized. And she's saying that that's not a problem because we're gonna benefit either way. Actually, no. We don't benefit when we subsidize agriculture. It's bad if you do it for domestic consumption, but it's even worse when you do it for foreign consumption. That is, if you're subsidizing farmers to export. That's even worse. Why is that? Because when you subsidize a business or an industry, it means that you're diverting resources from the productive sectors, so the sectors that don't need the subsidies and can stand on their own, to prop up the less productive sectors. That is inefficient and wasteful. It doesn't make any economic sense. What we should do is remove the subsidies and let things play out. Some farmers are going to go out of business, but that's a good thing because it's going to force the industry to become more competitive. The good ones are going to survive, but the bad ones are going to go out of business. That's what you want. You want to put your best guys forward. And before you tell me, oh, that's just theory, no. This has already been tested. Take the case of New Zealand, for instance. In 1985, it removed all of its subsidies and trade barriers. And if you look at it today, the farmers are much better off and productivity has gone up dramatically.
New Zealand had followed a model in the past that the government should promote certain industries and jigger the rules so those industries will be selected as winners. And so the government had to subsidize and create all kinds of manufacturing for automobiles and television sets and so on. This was not adding value. This was busy work that subtracted value. It made everyone in the society poor.
The trouble was the whole tangle of regulations and controls and subsidies, and New Zealanders knew it wasn't working. That's when the trigger went off for highly radical reform.
By 1984, the economy was collapsing. After 9 years spent denying the economic reality surrounding him, Prime Minister Robert Muldoon, leader of the National Party, was feeling his support dwindling, and he suddenly calls a late-night press conference to announce new elections.
So we got a date, Prime Minister?
We got a date, the 14th of July, which we've worked out at Government House as being the appropriate date.
That doesn't give you much time to run up to an election, Prime Minister.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it? The New Zealand people, if they want me to lead a government, they'll vote accordingly. If they want that other bloke to lead a government, they'll vote for him. That's it. Okay.
9:30 p.m. Saturday the 14th of July, 1984. Moment of political history.
Muldoon and the National Party lose in a landslide, and the Labour Party takes control. David Longy becomes Prime Minister, and within days, a new Finance Minister is appointed. He is Roger Douglas.
New Zealand has tremendous potential. It has to be remembered that in 1956 we were the richest country in the world. We slipped down.
One of the big things that we did was to take immediate responsibility. There was no point dwelling on what Muldoon hadn't done over 9 years. When you were elected, it's your responsibility. You own it.
Douglas had a tough love vision for New Zealand's future.
We took interest rate controls off. We got the wage controls off. So we did a whole lot of things immediately. We took away a lot of support for manufacturers. We opened up import licensing. We took away or removed privilege. We just got rid of government handouts to special interest groups.
Many of the first reforms affected the farmers directly. Within 6 months, all farming subsidies ended. The federated farmers supported this, but only if trade restrictions were simultaneously removed. This way, the cost of farm equipment would drop, and farmers would have access to world markets.
New Zealand got rid of the whole raft of that sort of thing. Farmers had better access to imports like tractors and other goods that they had a harder time getting before.
And it was interesting because it taught me a lesson that if you package the reforms as we did, that becomes the key to acceptance. Because whilst the farmers might have been unhappy to lose all their subsidies, they gained by the fact that they could import from anywhere in the world cheaper.
New Zealand has fundamentally changed. If you went out to farmers before the reforms of '84 and said, would you do away with subsidies and exports incentives? Most of them would say, hell no. If you asked them now, they would say, why would we want to have subsidies? Because the beauty of our current system of no subsidies is if there's a world change in thinking or the marketplace or something happens overseas, New Zealanders change overnight. So we are adaptable. And why would you want to go back to a system that just protects old dying industries?
So stop calling me insensitive, okay? I'm not. I'm a nice person. Like, this girl said that I look down on farmers. I don't. I just understand that you have to let the industry fend for itself. You know, it's like having an overprotective mother. The baby needs to learn how to walk, but every single time it's trying to learn, the mother steps in trying to protect it from falling. No, let the baby learn how to walk. It's gonna drop, it's gonna fall, let it learn. And if it doesn't learn, get a new baby. I'm joking, okay? That was a joke. Let's look at this next tweet. So, Shanti Pansy, that's a good name actually. I like it. She initially said that my original tweet was trash. And she went on to explain why she thinks it was trash. She said that it is a trash take to believe that farmers are unable to pay back loans. Shan, I never said that. If you return to my original tweet, I essentially said that loans are only given to people who have a good chance of repaying. Because remember, this started with the girl's tweet, which was every single Jamaican farmer should be able to access loans. Implicit in that statement is not enough Jamaican farmers are given loans. Because if they were, she would need to say this. Now, think about it rationally. Why wouldn't the private sector, that is private banks and financial institutions, why wouldn't they want to give loans to farmers? That is literally how they make money. Banks make money by loaning money. So they have a financial interest to loan money. So why aren't they providing more capital to farmers? It must mean that they've assessed farmers to be high risk, uncertainty of revenues, tiny profit margins. A lot of them are unprofitable. They're unproductive. Those are the reasons. And you know who agrees with me, incidentally? A guy by the name of Andre Haughton. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's a local economist. I don't agree with everything he says, but I think he's very smart. And fortunately, he wrote an article in the GLEANER on this very topic, the link to which is going to be in the description. So this is what he said. While agriculture productivity has been increasing in the US and other developed countries, agriculture productivity has been declining in Jamaica due to a lack of research, development, and implementation of new techniques and strategies on a widespread basis. This, to some extent, has been due to a lack of funding in some regard. The private sector, especially in developing countries, has been less than willing to lend to the productive sector, especially the farming sector, due to a high level of risk and uncertainty surrounding output, crop yield, and revenue generation. I mean, you can read the rest if you want. It is a wonderful article. He also said something else which was absolutely fantastic. This is what he said. Financial institutions outline that they face 3 major challenges when attempting to invest in the agriculture industry. Let's just skip number 1. Let's just focus on number 2. There is higher perception of non-payment of loans due to higher perception of risk, including production, price, and market risk. Okay, so banks have assessed farmers to be high risk. That's why they're not getting enough in loans. Got it. As you can see, this is consistent with what I was trying to explain to these people on Twitter. Let's move on to the next tweet. So there's this guy called Ming. He thinks that I'm wrong and he gave his reasons for it. Here are the reasons. He implied that farmers are less likely to pay. Oh, so better than Shan, because remember, Shan said that I said that farmers are unable to pay when I didn't say that. So thank you, Ming, for correctly identifying that I implied that farmers are less likely to repay loans. He goes on to say, not sure why. Ming, I explained why. If you had read my earlier tweets, you'd have seen it. I said that farmers are assessed as being high risk. It seems as though Ming was just reacting to my tweet without sufficient information. That's okay. Happens to the best of us. He goes on to say, also, farmers are able to secure loans and or grant funding from a lot of institutions. Yeah, I never said that was impossible. As you pointed out, I implied that they're less likely to repay loans. Or at least, that's what the banks think. And if they get the loans, they're going to be charged higher interest rates because they're assessed as being high risk. Number 2. Farming can be a profitable venture. Sure, I never said that it couldn't be. I said that farming on a whole is inefficient, unproductive, and unprofitable. See, right here, I said that it isn't a secret that farming on a whole isn't profitable. And here again, I said that the agriculture sector is weak and unproductive. At this point, I don't even think that Ming even knows what on a whole means. Because if he knew, he wouldn't have said this. Listen, on a whole means that it is true generally, not in every specific case, generally. So sure, you can find individual farmers out here who are profitable, but that's not the case for all or even most farmers in Jamaica. That's what it means. That's why I said in this tweet, the farmers who plant popular crops earn a pittance. What does a pittance mean? It means a small amount of money, which means that some are profitable, but they earn a small amount of money. Then he says, the problem is when people are not open to learning and they spit their opinions as facts. Ming, you're a special one. because everything I said was accurate. Factually. There's only one thing I said which, although not necessarily inaccurate, was misleading, and it was something to do about creative destruction. I could have probably explained that much better. I'm gonna get to it later on still. Let's move on to another tweet. Stretch said, in some cases, Jamaica is being dumped on. Local industry should be protected from unfair trade. Now, this is what you call economic ignorance. The term dumping that he's referring to here is an economic term, and it usually means that foreign companies are selling us goods and services below the cost of production. And they're doing this to drive out some of our local companies out of business. And the people who are against this, like him, are upset because they're saying that the only way they're able to do this is because their government is subsidizing them to export to us at cheap prices. So they're dumping. Now, think about this. Is that a problem or an opportunity? He's complaining that sometimes foreign companies are selling us products at cheap prices, cheaper than what you'd have otherwise gotten them for within Jamaica. And that's a problem to him. You shouldn't be able to buy cheap products from overseas because some of our local companies can't compete on price. How is that a problem? Why would you want to pay more for something? If you can get it cheaper from overseas, why not buy it from overseas? He's saying, no, that's unfair competition. Those governments are subsidizing those companies to export to us. We should protect our local industry by raising tariffs so that Jamaicans pay more for products and services. That's going to help them. Jamaicans should pay more. Sometimes I wonder whether you guys are being paid enough, because I swear. Anyways, I'm going to insert a clip of a Nobel Prize winning economist. He's going to explain what I just explained. So if you didn't quite catch it with my explanation, maybe his is better.
Yet, believe it or not, many still maintain today that markets cannot be left to operate freely, that they must be controlled by government. This dockside is in Scotland. A British government, a socialist government, decided that its role was to protect the workers here from competition. So down there in Govan shipyards, they're building these vessels for the Polish government. To get the order, the British government is using the money of British taxpayers to subsidize the work. In other words, British people are making these ships in order to sell them at a loss to the Poles. Not only the Poles, but also we in America benefit from this kind of philanthropy. The steel industry in the United States makes a fine product. Other countries do too, and their steel is often cheaper, sometimes because their taxpayers subsidize it. So why shouldn't the American consumer buy steel wherever he can get it cheapest, at home or abroad? The American steel industry works very hard, trying to persuade us that it's not in our self-interest to buy in the cheapest market. They urge the government to restrict what they call unfair competition, though of course they recognize that there are dangers in this.
The dilemma of asking our government for assistance in this problem of unfair competition bothers many of us because the sword does cut both ways. But we believe that what we have attempted to do is far different than the kinds of direct government involvement that occur in many of the foreign nations around the world, where the governments provide direct financial assistance in the form of either ownership or loans or subsidies in some fashion or another. What we have attempted to do is simply to get our government to enforce United States laws against unfair competition that have been on the United States books. We draw a clear distinction between that and, for example, the several $100 million that the French government has granted to the French steel companies, or that the British Steel Corporation has received $1.3 billion for capital investment this year. So that while we are uneasy in any way interfacing with our government in what we traditionally believe are the free enterprise prerogatives, yet what we're only asking for is that the government enforce the laws that our Congress has passed. And I'm not sure that that's really any different than asking someone to arrest someone that commits a crime. I don't think we would be accused of being reactionary if we reported somebody who was stealing to the police, if it were in violation of a U.S. law. We think that we're doing exactly the same thing when we bring cases against foreign producers who we believe are violating U.S. laws.
The fallacy with that argument is that it begs the real question. Why should there be laws that in effect prevent you and me from buying in the cheapest market? When anyone complains about unfair competition, consumers beware. That is really a cry for special privilege, always at the expense of the consumer. What we need in this country is free competition. As consumers buying in an international market, the more unfair the competition, the better. That means lower prices and better quality for us. If foreign governments want to use their taxpayers' money to sell people in the United States goods below cost, why should we complain? Their own taxpayers will complain soon enough, and it will not last for very long. History provides lots of evidence on what happens when government-protected industries compete with industries who have to operate in an open and free market. It's almost always the government-protected industries that come out second best. Nothing would promote the long-run health of the steel industry, make it into a more efficient, profitable, and productive industry than for the U.S. government to keep its hands off, neither providing special privileges nor imposing special restraints. And what's true for the steel industry is true for every other industry in the country.
You see, a lot of these people called me an idiot, you know. Most of them never even tried explaining why they think I'm wrong. It's just, you're an idiot, and apparently that somehow makes them appear smart. For instance, this girl. This take is very nonsensical. I explained why it isn't. She, no response. This person. Everyday people come on here and say crap. Any explanation? None. This is so dunce. I asked why? No response. This person now. LOL. This is what these people had to offer. Look at this. You guys say anything on here. I mean, this guy says that I'm not very bright. I responded. His response, peace be with you. I could go on and on and on. Just personal attacks, nothing of substance. And the ones who tried to prove me wrong were actually wrong. But probably the worst of them all was this guy. He was constantly harassing me, saying that I should provide him with a textbook. And I'm like, this guy says that he understands economics. I'm using terms that anyone who understands economics should know. So I'm there confused. What is he talking about? I'm applying economic concepts to explain our Jamaican context. And he's like, provide me with a textbook. These concepts are in every single economic textbook. You could have even Googled this and you would have stumbled on some good results. Another problem is that the questions he was asking made no sense. He was saying, which econ textbook is telling you that Jamaica's agricultural sector is a creative destruction? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't even know how to process that question. But luckily, you had someone there who actually understood the term. Maybe you Googled it, I don't know. But he responded to this guy and said, I think he's being a bit pedantic, but what he's trying to say is that your use of the phrasing isn't entirely correct. So I'm there saying, yes, finally, someone gets it. And I don't know, maybe I was being a bit too harsh to the guy because this is what I said. Even your response is inscrutable. Even your question is inscrutable. It makes no sense. None. And it was actually around this time I was losing patience. I realized that these people didn't even understand logic. For instance, this person asked, how is insulting someone a logical fallacy? And I'm like, wow. This is how the events unfolded. I posited my argument. Someone responded with, you're not very bright. To which I said, ad hominems, that's the best you can do? Pathetic. And then this person asked, How is insulting someone a logical fallacy? All this person had to do was Google the term to understand why the guy's response to my argument is an ad hominem. Let me pull up the definition. Ad hominem. This fallacy occurs when, instead of addressing someone's argument, you attack the person or some aspect of the person making the argument. The guy attacked me, attacked my intellect, saying that I was not very bright. He did not attack my argument. He didn't disprove me in any way. If you make an argument and someone responds by saying that you're an idiot, that doesn't disprove your argument. It's a logical fallacy. But this person asked, how is it a fallacy? That was the caliber of the people I was dealing with. And honestly, that's why I think that we'll never achieve meaningful economic growth in this country. Because the way how economies grow is by economizing on production. The whole idea is to produce more and more stuff using fewer and fewer resources. Innovation is what makes that possible. Creative destruction. Again, creative destruction is a process whereby you replace the outdated technology and old ways of doing things with the new technologies and new methods that are more efficient. And that's why I love using the example of the horse and buggy versus the car. Before the car, our primary means of transportation was the horse and buggy, as most people will tell you. But then we innovated and created the car, which is far superior to a horse and buggy. All those blacksmiths lost their jobs. But if they were willing to be retrained, they could work in the automobile industry because you would need the mechanics and you would need people assembling the cars on the assembly line. But actually, you know that, no, we don't even need people assembling cars on the assembly line anymore because we have machines that can assemble cars now. And that's a good thing because the machines increase our productivity and that makes us produce more stuff. In this instance, we're talking about cars. So what I'm saying is that we can produce more cars because we have machines assembling them instead of people. And that's connected to a larger point that I'm trying to show you, which is at the heart of everything is people. People have to come up with new and efficient ways of doing things. People have to come up with new technologies. And that's why we can't have much economic growth out here. Because we're dunce. A joke. What I'm trying to say is that the best and brightest of Jamaica leave. And the ones who are probably staying out here are probably wasting their talents. Probably scamming right now. Because if you have a good idea for a business, there's not much equity capital out here. And the little that is out here, they're not going to give you. So might as well leave. Yeah. Like, if you want to create the next Facebook or some other innovation, go to California. That's where Silicon Valley is. They'll give you the funding. And obviously, when you're talking about what's holding back economic growth in Jamaica, there are more things you kind of have to actually go over to understand the whole picture. It's not just, oh, human capital leaving. There are actually some more things, weak institutions and so on. I promise I'm going to make a video on it. It's just that these videos, critiquing and debunking people, tend to do better in terms of views and they reach a wider audience. So that's why I'm doing them. Anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope you learned something. I actually wanted to go over some more tweets, but the video is getting too long, so I'm going to end it here. And listen, let me just say this before I go. I'm not here to say that the people who disrespected me are idiots, even though they are. I'm not here to say that. As I said before, I think this is a teachable moment. I realize that some people can fall for the madness of crowds, but you have to be careful. Just because the crowd is saying something doesn't mean that it's actually right. Not everyone went on board with the crowd, so there's that. There were some people who actually came to my defense. I'm putting up screenshots of their tweets right now. Here, 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 and here. Thank you guys for defending me. And the ones who encouraged me in my DMs, thank you as well. But most importantly, I have to say thank you to my subscribers. I appreciate you guys a lot. As always, criticism is not bad mine. I'll see you in the next one.